October 1940. Benito Mussolini stood in his office at Palazzo Venezia, staring down at the map of North Africa. The Italian flags stretched across Libya, but ambition demanded more. Ports, deserts, oil, a grand empire, all that Hitler had gained in Europe. Yet the desert whispered warnings that Mussolini refused to hear. Victory, he believed, would come swiftly. But the sands of Africa would expose every flaw in his army and every illusion in his leadership. When the war began, Mussolini had assured his generals, "We only need a few thousand dead to sit at the peace table." North Africa would be easy, the British weak, the Italians unstoppable. He was catastrophically wronged as his divisions inched toward Egypt. The army faltered. Tanks were outdated, soldiers exhausted, many wielding rifles from the First World War. Trucks broke down in the unforgiving desert, supplies ran thin, and morale withered under the scorching sun. Each step forward swallowed Mussolini's dream deeper into the sand. Then the British struck. Operation Compass, intended as a small push, became a hammer blow. Italian divisions collapsed, entire formations surrendered, and ports fell almost without resistance. Mussolini's fantasy of a swift conquest crumbled before a single major battle that in Rome. Fear rippled through the regime. Generals whispered of advancing British forces. Ministers dreaded humiliation. Mussolini? His mind was singular. Germany must save him. For the first time since the war began, he sent a desperate plea to Berlin. Hitler read the telegram in silence. He had long known Italy was weak, but never this weak. Italy, once a confident ally, now begged for rescue. Hitler sighed, staring through the gray Berlin sky. "We must help him," he murmured. "If Italy falls, our southern flank collapses." Yet beneath the pragmatism, a colder emotion lingered, disappointment. Mingled with the irritation of being dragged into another front, he dispatched General Erwin Rommel, the Desert Fox, to intervene. Intended as a small, defensive mission, Rommel's arrival shifted everything. The moment he set foot in Libya, he saw chaos. Exhausted Italian troops, broken vehicles, confused commanders, fortifications unprepared for battle. The desert stretched endless and merciless before him. Rommel wrote in his diary, "Everything here depends on speed. If we move fast, we survive. If not, we die." He did not wait for Berlin's permission. He struck. Suddenly, the war shifted. Rommel drove the British back hundreds of miles, capturing towns, airfields, prisoners. Rome celebrated wildly, mistaking German victories for Italian glory. Mussolini smiled at newspapers praising the Axis, but in private, he knew the truth. Italy was surviving on German power. He sent another message to Hitler, full of praise for German brilliance, Rommel's genius, the unbreakable Axis spirit. Beneath the flattery was fear. Italy's pride, its empire, now rested in the hands of another nation. Mussolini's dependence on Germany deepened. By early 1941, British reinforcements returned. The desert became a seesaw of advances and retreats. Supply lines stretched thin, sandstorms blinded pilots, engines overheated, tanks broke down. Mussolini's telegrams to Berlin grew increasingly desperate. Hitler grew impatient. He respected Mussolini, admired even, but the Italian leader was now a liability. Generals murmured the same. If Italy collapses, Africa is lost. Mussolini's appeals became more frantic, more personal. Without Germany, North Africa will fall. Hitler read the latest message slowly, face hardening. Anger simmered. Mussolini started this war without asking. Now he demands we save him, again. Yet logic prevailed. The Mediterranean could not be abandoned. Reinforcements were sent, divisions, tanks, aircraft, supplies. North Africa was becoming a German war, not an Italian one. Even as German strength grew, Mussolini's fear multiplied. He had losses from his own generals, exaggerated victories, portrayed imminent success that never existed. Each night, he waited for Hitler's next reply, craving reassurance and dreading blame. Hitler began to doubt the Italian Empire. Italy must hold its own territory. Germany cannot fight Britain everywhere, he warned his advisors. Reality was harsher. Germany was fighting across Europe, the Atlantic, and now deeper into the deserts of Africa. By late 1941, Mussolini's telegrams admitted Italy's resources were nearly depleted. Food shortages, fuel scarcity, crippled factories. One line would haunt Hitler: Duce needs Germany as the desert needs rain. Hitler's reply was blunt, cold, uncompromising. If Africa is to be saved, your army must fight with discipline. Germany cannot win this war for you. Mussolini read the message, trembling. The rebuke was clear, yet Hitler continued to send aid. Without German support, Italy would crumble. In the desert, in the Mediterranean, and eventually, in Europe, the relationship had changed. Mussolini saw Hitler as a lifeline. Hitler saw Mussolini as a burden. Bound together by circumstance, yet wary of each other's weaknesses, in early 1942, Rommel launched another daring attack. Mussolini traveled to Libya, riding beside Rommel in a parade, hoping to claim glory. Hitler shook his head in Berlin. He celebrates too early, he told aides. The British were planning a larger counterattack, stronger than before. Everything Mussolini feared would soon become reality. Yet for months, he continued to plead, and Hitler continued to answer, sometimes frustrated, sometimes with cold logic, always believing Germany alone could hold the Axis together. The Desert War was only halfway through, but the tension between Berlin and Rome had hardened into something irreversible. Mussolini begged. Hitler delivered. And history was watching. The moment of reckoning. A battle that would expose the truth behind Mussolini's desperation and Hitler's response was approaching. El Alamein. And as the sand stretched endlessly across the horizon, one certainty remained. The Axis, united in ambition, was fraying under the weight of reality, ego, and survival. Mussolini's empire hung on German strength. Hitler's patience was wearing thin. Each telegram, each order, each desperate plea brought them closer to confrontation, closer to revelation. In the desert, the war was not just about tanks and soldiers. It was about pride, trust, ambition, and failure. And it would change the Axis forever. Spring 1942. Rommel's forces had grown stronger. German divisions, tanks, and aircraft poured into Libya. Mussolini watched every dispatch with growing hope, as if German success could erase Italy's failures. He traveled between command posts, inspecting troops, waving at soldiers, trying to appear in control. But deep down, he knew it was German skill, not Italian planning, that was turning the tide. Rommel, meanwhile, moved like a predator across the desert. He ignored formalities, bypassed bureaucrats, and struck with precision. Italian soldiers followed, sometimes reluctantly, sometimes awed by the German efficiency. The Desert Fox had turned what was a desperate retreat into audacious advances. Yet for every success, Mussolini's fears gnawed at him. He sent constant reports to Berlin, each more anxious than the last. Hitler read them with a mix of irritation and calculation. Mussolini's desperation was clear, yet the Italian leader still tried to claim credit for German victories. Rome will celebrate as if it is Italian triumph, Hitler muttered to his generals. But we know the truth. Italy survives on German strength. and Mussolini must remember this. By mid-1942, the British regrouped. El Alamein loomed on the horizon. Supply lines stretched thin for both sides. Tanks choked with sand, engines overheated, and the desert sun burned men and machinery alike. Every movement required careful calculation. One mistake, and disaster would strike. Mussolini continued his frantic telegrams. He praised Rommel, praised German discipline, begged for more support. Each line was a mix of flattery, fear, and silent apology. Hitler's replies grew shorter, sharper, colder. No praise, no indulgence, only commands and strategic reasoning. The tension between them had become palpable. Mussolini, once confident, now appeared dependent. Hitler, once admiring, now appeared wary. Each message carried unspoken weight. Failure could not be tolerated, but both men understood their fates were intertwined. Rommel advanced relentlessly. Towns fell, airfields were captured, British forces retreated. But every victory was shadowed by Mussolini's presence, his need for recognition, his constant fear of blame. Hitler observed from Berlin, calculating, observing, waiting for Mussolini's inevitable mistakes. Then came July 1942, the first full assault at El Alamein. Rommel's forces struck with precision, but British resistance stiffened. The desert, which had swallowed Italian mistakes, now challenged German audacity. Rommel's strategy required every ounce of skill, every division at full strength, and yet Mussolini's interference lingered like a shadow. Mussolini demanded constant updates, reports, reassurances. His letters, now almost daily, oscillated between confidence and desperation. Hitler read them, clenched his jaw, and made notes. The Axis was at a turning point. Success hung on German execution, not Italian ambition. In Berlin, Hitler called his generals. Italy will not hold North Africa alone. Germany cannot fight everywhere. We must decide, how much do we commit? And how much do we let Mussolini face reality? His voice was steady, but inside, frustration simmered. Mussolini had promised much, delivered little, and now expected salvation. Meanwhile, in Rome, Mussolini's public speeches celebrated victories that were largely German. He toured troops, waved at parades, and plastered headlines with Axis unity. But the desert, harsh and unyielding, knew the truth. Italian ambition had nearly collapsed without German intervention. Rommel advanced deeper, pushing British forces back to the Egyptian frontier. Tanks clashed, artillery thundered, and sandstorms shrouded both men and machines. Each victory solidified Rommel's reputation, but Mussolini's anxiety only grew. He wrote again to Berlin, "More support is needed. Italian forces cannot sustain without Germany." Hitler's reply was curt. No encouragement, no embellishment. Just reality. Discipline. Fight effectively, or we cannot hold Africa. Germany will not cover failures indefinitely. Mussolini read the words, a chill running down his spine. He knew the stakes, but still clung to hope that German skill would mask Italian weakness. August 1942. The Second Battle of El Alamein approached. Rommel prepared meticulously, calculating supply lines, troop positions, artillery range, and air cover. Mussolini was anxious, pacing, sending yet more urgent telegrams. Hitler, back in Berlin, monitored the situation, fully aware that the coming battle could decide the Axis' future in North Africa. The Italians remained dependent, the Germans relentless. Hitler's admiration for Mussolini had waned. His patience was thin. Mussolini's pride hung on borrowed victories, and each message to Berlin revealed more desperation than confidence. In the desert, the armies readied. The sun rose over endless sands, Tanks rumbled, soldiers tightened grips on rifles, pilots checked engines, and commanders calculated risk with grim precision. The stage was set for confrontation, for triumph, for disaster. Mussolini hoped, Rommel calculated, Hitler waited. The sands of North Africa had become more than a battlefield. They were a mirror to the Axis alliance itself. Ambition, ego, dependence, and the harsh truth of war. Every message between Rome and Berlin, every movement of troops across the desert, every decision of Rommel was now charged with tension. Mussolini begged, Hitler dictated, and the desert silently judged them both. El Alamein would reveal everything. Italy's illusions, Germany's strength, and the fragile bond that tied two dictators together. Victory or defeat would not just be military. It would expose the truth of ambition and reliance, pride and fear, for the Axis powers in Africa. And as the sun set over the desert, Rommel's divisions prepared for battle. Mussolini sent one last urgent telegram. Hitler, reading it, leaned back, dark eyes narrowing. Words were futile. The desert would speak. The stage was set for one of the most decisive confrontations in the North African campaign. Every soldier, every tank, every command would determine the fate of Mussolini's ambitions and the Axis's future. The Axis alliance, once confident, now teetered on the edge of reality. Mussolini depended entirely on German might. Hitler balanced duty, strategy, and frustration. And the desert, vast and unrelenting, waited to reveal the truth. The drama of North Africa, the tension between Rome and Berlin, the courage of soldiers, and the unforgiving landscape of war, all converged toward a moment that would change the course of history. And in that moment, the words Mussolini had sent, the decisions Hitler had made, and the bravery of Rommel's troops would collide with the unforgiving reality of the desert. North Africa would never be the same.